Jamais vu.
Even falling asleep in my bed, I imagined him sleeping, somewhere there, far from me. I imagined, and I wanted to fix his blanket, or his world if he's not okay.
You just listen to me. Okay, Seokjin asks excitedly. You don't have to understand. Taehyung looks indifferently at the man who runs around the laboratory from one table to another, equipped, wearing safety glasses and a white robe. He himself has 7 cups of espresso and 0 desire to live in him today, and he would not understand Seokjin even if he was in a more adequate state. Adequate is when you move at the expense of energy in your body, and not its pathetic imitation in the form of instant coffee, energy drinks and other charms of student life. Taehyung at the last stage of professional development, he is about to become the youngest teacher at his own university, and he doesn't really care about what Seokjin is talking about. Something about black holes, magnetic storms in the sun, waves. Taehyung blinks slowly, struggling with sleep. Not about those waves that happen on the seas, oceans, but about other, some electromagnetic waves. He, the crazy scientist of the best graduate of the University of Physics and Mathematics, has his own laboratory and a lot of free time, judging by the moments when he calls Taehyung to demonstrate something new, and as useless as possible. But maybe you'll be more lucky today. You know that light has wave properties, he says excitedly, witching over some strange device that Taehyung didn't even pay attention to. It's a long story. You need to open physics to dummies. But, in general, to explain the transition of light from wave to corpuscular, the Copenhagen interpretation introduced the process of so-called collapse. Is everything clear yet? Not a word. Taehyung wears and rubs his eyes, taking a couple of sips of cooled coffee. Well, that's not the main thing. You just listen. Seokjin doesn't take any energy. In front of him on the table there's a black glass, around which there are the same black panels. According to this interpretation, quantum mechanics does not describe micro-objects, but only their properties, manifested only in macro conditions. But I thought, and then just took it and didn't agree with it, because in my business, in principle, you can't be sure of something 100%. In general, he smiles. I came to the conclusion that by reducing the object to quantum, theoretically, we can help him invade the quantum world under the influence of waves of light. He folds his hands together and actively gestures, showing where he can invade, and, again, purely theoretically, to transfer the object to a completely different world. Not ours. Seokjin looks at him waitingly, and Taehyung frowns thoughtfully and nods. Quint. I've heard something about it, he says smartly, at school. About 15 years ago. Seokjin sighs heavily. Okay, I see you're not trying to understand me at all, and even for the sake of decency you don't want to pretend you're interested, Seokjin says maliciously, without any questions. Taehyung's phone grabs and places it on the panel in the very middle. But now I'll break your brain. You're already. Experience number 34. Seokjin sounds out of habit, connecting the wires to the standing panels. Taehyung's design itself resembles a strip platform, only its mini version, since, to my great regret, no one has yet come up with a diminutive gun. We can't just put an object in the quantum world like this. But, he looks at Taehyung with enthusiasm in his eyes, clicking the switch and conducting the current to the structure. It's getting restless. We can try to catch a charged quantum from a strange world, in which people, theoretically, have already learned to reduce objects. Taehyung even ran goosebumps on his back from his voice. The table rattled. An empty flask fell on the floor, shattering, but Seokjin looks with admiration at Taehyung's mobile, who, under the influence of current and some extraterrestrial forces, slightly rose above the panel. But the phone immediately falls back. The glass stops rattling. The light no longer flickers. There is a grave silence in the laboratory, and Seokjin looks at Taehyung with such glowing eyes, as if he had just created real magic. I'm amazed, says Taehyung, unemotionally, propped his chin with his fist. Your phone pulled and passed through the charged particles from the quantum world thanks to electromagnetic waves. Jin smiles brightly and seems to be bursting with an excess of emotions. Did you see how he risen into the air for a second? He was punched with a crazy charge. For a whole second, theoretically, he was connected to another universe. I'm sure of this by 75.9%. His eyes twinkle brightly, reflecting the light of the lamps from which Taehyung squints. It was? He breathes heavily, touching his chest. Incredible. Yes. Unforgettable. Will you give me the phone? Seokjin changes in his face. His look becomes skeptical. You didn't understand what just happened, did you? Taehyung shakes his head honestly. I didn't understand at all. Jin is indignant. This experience may be our future. But why do I keep showing you all this at all? I'm the only one who can listen to all this nonsense you're talking about and not go crazy. The incredible thing just happened before your eyes, and you. Stop drinking so much coffee. He grabs the papers rolled into a tube and hits Taehyung on the head. He doesn't even try to dodge, indifferently swallows the rest of the drink, takes the phone, squinting that he is dead by as much as 5%, and throws on a coat. Just give up a couple of classes and get enough sleep at last. I'm already tired of your sleepy and ignorant face. I need more language practice, Taehyung yawns, and a healthy sleep, and less time in your company. Wrinkles my nose. You influenced me with your negative atoms. It was about quanta. Unlearned. He swings papers at him again. Yes, I'm delighted with these guys. Taehyung manages to dodge the blow and check the time on his wristwatch, but it's time for me to run. Youngjin must have waited for me. Who did you give up at all? The humanitarian unfinished? He gave up to the same unfinished humanitarians. The door behind him almost closes, but Taehyung stops that one and calls a friend. Seriously reports. And, for God's sake, just don't show this experiment to anyone. Don't be disgraced. A packed chocolate muffin arrives at the already closed door. A flurry of not the most affectionate words is heard, but it is absolutely normal for them. Taehyung knows Jin as long as he remembers himself. They went to school together, attended acting clubs and clay molding. They were engaged in martial arts, swimming, tried equestrian sports until they were convinced that being normal was not for them. That's how Kim Suk-jin, head of the Department of Scientific Technology Development at the university, appeared. Taehyung, a future professor and teacher of linguistics, whose mental state is based on one honest word, also appeared. Taehyung is used to working for wear and tear, used to exhausting himself, not sleeping for days, achieving what you want. Kim Taehyung always gets what he wants, and he wants a hot latte and finally be home. And 15 minutes later, he is already throwing off his shoes in the hallway, balancing with a frozen latte in his hand and realizing that he is again late for the start of the individual class. Taehyung doesn't get anything for these very classes. Sometimes, of course, he gets free coffee or lunch if he accidentally meets his students in a cafe, but mostly he does it not for money, but for the sake of experience. He teaches poor students as he once was himself, and in return receives tons of love, sometimes tears and gratitude. He likes to help, although he does not teach everyone. First, he arranges a couple of online classes to understand that a person is serious and responsibly approaches the study of English, Japanese or Chinese, Kim Taehyung's 3 whales, which he tirelessly boasts about. Here, they say, look how awesome, fat and fat they are. I did it all myself. I studied, identified, put 50% of my physical and mental health on it, reducing my life expectancy by half. But I achieved everything myself and I am proud of it. And why not be proud? That's why Taehyung continues to swallow coffee and help the weak learn the basics of foreign languages. He only lacks a nimbus. Although at the end of the online lesson, Youngjin says in a crying voice, "Mr. Kim, you are a real angel." Taehyung smiles modestly. Of course, he feels good. But he doesn't have time to answer when his phone rings, and Youngjin says goodbye first by dropping a video call. The number is unknown, but Taehyung is not used to it. Students find it through the website of the university, where most of them study themselves and where Taehyung studied. Someone needs to improve their knowledge for the test. Someone wants to try to pass the entrance exams, although there are also flying birds that learn the language for themselves. These delight Taehyung the most, especially when they don't quit this business after the first few lessons under some stupid pretext, like the sudden death of a grandmother, or cat, or everyone at once, and then never get in touch. Apparently, they can't cope with the bitterness of loss. Kim Taehyung, how can I help? He clamps the phone between his shoulder and ear, unscrewing the belt. I read on the website that you teach English lessons for free. The connection is bad, and Taehyung frowns, pressing the phone closer to his ear. If Suk-jin broke it with his idiotic experiments, Taehyung will break his hands. That's right. What do you need to do to sign up with you? The voice at the other end is serious. Taehyung likes such a confident approach from the first call. He lowers the corners of his lips, standing in the middle of the living room with half-down pants and checking the diary. Name your name and the time at which it will be convenient to conduct a couple of trial classes. You see, Taehyung puffs, pulling off his clothes, but gets confused in his pants, stumbles and almost falls to the floor. I will not waste my time on someone's temporary hobby. So first I spend a few trial online classes to make sure that the person is serious. Are you serious, mister? How are you? Chonguk. So, Chonguk. Is it okay that I menu? Go on. They confidently tell him. and Taehyung is even lost from such pressure, but says, "My classes are free only for those who know how to appreciate their own and other people's time. And I won't buy any excuses like dead grandmothers," he says almost strictly, although, judging by the conversation, the guy is far from a student. Taehyung may be wrong. "I'll have to marry someone else to impress me and cause pity. I have a lot of relatives," he says without a shadow of laughter. "If you're free on Sunday, it would be great." Taehyung is a little bit shocked by referring to him on you, but he doesn't get a little bit of it. If a person younger than him is comfortable to communicate and so, then please, he is not picky. Moreover, this Chonguk is far from the first. On Sunday, Taehyung repeats thoughtfully, looking back into the diary, where on this day on a half sheet of black and white some formulas that descended on Seokjin in their last drunkenness, agreed. "Send me your email, I'll send you the material for the first class. Will it be okay at 6 evenings?" The intonation changes amusingly. The guy is clearly puzzled. Morning, at 6 in the morning, all normal people sleep. Then evenings, Taehyung makes a note on Sunday, writing down the time and name. Young Chonguk does not ask why there is such a large time spread. He only briefly agrees, thanks and wishes all the best, and a couple of minutes later sends an email address. And Taehyung would not have crucised himself with explanations. On the weekend he goes to bed without conscience at 7 in the morning, wakes up around 3, gathers for a long time to get out of bed. And on Monday morning he hates himself very much for such a nasty schedule, drinks coffee in gallons. Maintaining the light of life and ignoring all Seokjin's statements that he will not go broke on the wreath for his funeral if Taehyung suddenly dies from a taurine overdose. Taehyung doesn't sleep well simply because he burns with his work, loves his job, likes to see smiles on the faces of his students when they begin to understand something. Youngjin sends him a photo of a freshly baked meat pie with a golden crust, signing that he will treat Mr. Kim the same on Monday before class, if he deigns to come to the university. Taehyung moans pitifully. He adores Youngjin's food, which he cooks himself. But he didn't plan to go to university, because he has a day off this Monday and grand plans, sleep until noon, ignoring Seokjin, who, if Taehyung comes to the university, will probably learn. Catch him and drag him to the laboratory to show what else he could think of. The light of science, Taehyung sighs, but agrees to run for his favorite treat in the morning. After dropping Jean's call, he opens the mail and copies all the necessary files for the first lesson. Skeptical of the last date of visiting his account with this young Chonguk, but still throws off the material and closes the laptop cover, reclining on the back of the chair. All Taehyung wants now is to sleep quite a bit, but instead takes a bath, and then, while watching TV, he makes a clay face mask, with a clean hand throwing the chips left over from their get-together with gin into his mouth. He needs to look good, given how many hours a day he sleeps. It quickly darks outside the window, and Taehyung doesn't have time to open the new package. The doorbell rings. At 9 o'clock in the evening is the height of his day, but he frowns at the corridor, turns off the sound on the TV and silently walks to the door. They're already pounding loudly in that one, and Taehyung grabs his heart in fright, hearing Seokjin's voice, "Open it already. I'm not going to spend the night on the stairwell," he grumbles. Taehyung, opening the door, watches his gloomy face, as the guy puts bags on the floor, in which bottles ring, apparently with beer. "Oh, cool." Jin points his finger at his face. "You're a beauty. We're like a bachelorette party today. Will you smear me?" "You. I see. Already smeared." Taehyung looks at him incomprehensibly, while he throws off his shoes and jacket, staggering drunkenly, and jokes with jokes, but Taehyung knows that it doesn't mean anything good. What happened? What could have happened to someone like me? He shrugs and, pulling 2 bottles out of the bag, hands one to Taehyung. "I just suffer again because of my talentless experiments. Talentless myself and incompetent everything. Do I have the right or not?" He opens the bottle, and Taehyung is still standing, frowning at him. When Seokjin begins a period of self-flagellation, everything gets very bad. At such moments, he can't be abandoned. You just need to talk to him, convince him that he's cooler than Hawking himself, and everything will be fine. Therefore, in fact, Taehyung has no choice but to breathe hard, open the bottle and go crazy. His friend still needs moral support. So who is he to refuse? And Taehyung still had no plans for the next weekend, except for online classes, so an hour later the two of them open the 4th bottle and pour sincere but such drunk compliments. And the clay that dried on his face right on Taehyung's beige sofa. His face is terribly itching, and Taehyung knows that tomorrow they will both regret what is happening, but now they feel good. Now Seokjin declares in a trusting, drunken voice that Taehyung is the best linguist in humanities he only knows, and Taehyung, who remembers how hard all this knowledge got, looks at him tearfully. And you're the best chemist I know, he says. And Seokjin throws a quirk at him from the other end of the couch. I'm a fucking physicist. It's true. It's fucking. Taehyung cleans all this mess alone in the morning, because Jin rarely stays at his bed, preferring his double bed to a narrow sofa. Their weekends are often like this, quite noisy, despite the fact that they are sitting together. On TV, the talent show is already familiar to both of them. Glass bottles and comments on each performance sound in the living room until Seokjin starts swearing that his face is about to fall off if he doesn't wash away this piece of it. And then, as usual, it starts together. He, with a bandage on his head, red and in some places a dirty face, dresses and has difficulty explaining to the dispatcher. Taehyung never rushes him, doesn't kick him out himself, waits patiently, and when he closes the door behind another, he weaves the bed and falls asleep without undressing. The phone left in the living room is quietly pealing. There is an incoming message on the screen. It's lost and goes unanswered all the next days until Chonguk, the same new student, calls Taehyung exactly 5 minutes before the class starts. I can't connect via the computer, Taehyung reports. Let's try it this. He turns on the video call and displays the phone screen on the laptop, opening the Chonguk mail, to which he sent the documents, but looks at the guy incomprehensibly when he says, I didn't receive any files. I didn't receive any files. Taehyung's post office has a single message in response. Who is this? Weren't you mistaken when you sent it to me? Chonguk looks helplessly at the phone and grunts something under his nose while Taehyung glances at him. For some reason, he corrects his hair, looking at himself in the mirror, bites his lips to make them more red, but immediately imitates employment when the guy, raising his head, says, No, that's right. I don't know what the problem is. Taehyung frowns. Then let's try differently. He sends Chonguk a link to the site from where he took the necessary information, and waits for him to open it, wrinkling painfully. After drinking with Seokjin, Taehyung looked at himself in the mirror in the morning and was horrified, pretending never to use clay again. The face is still peeling, you have to moisturize, and Taehyung takes the cream without a second thought, already learned movements, and is put on the face. He spends a lot of time to look good, and his efforts are appreciated. All the doors are open in front of a beautiful face, as Seokjin likes to tell him. At the edge of his eye, Taehyung notices how closely he is being looked at and starts looking at the monitor. He is used to behaving the way he behaves with his students, completely forgetting that not everyone is able to appreciate as a jogging. Chonguk is probably one of those, judging by the look, serious and gloomy. And Taehyung expects anything, although he modestly hopes that his last actions will remain ignored. But he asks, What do you use? Taehyung hangs for a second, but shows the cream in the camera. Chonguk doesn't say anything, he doesn't comment on anything else. There is silence between them, and Taehyung feels so strange and extremely awkward for the first time. He clears his throat, taking his eyes off the screen, is already going to ask if the guy has opened the site, but instead he says, Do you have something against creams? He is not a conflict person, but someone else's look, frankly, strains him. I don't see anything wrong with taking care of myself, he answers indifferently, continuing to look at the screen. Taehyung gives him a short look, and Chonguk really looks disinterested. Taehyung understands that it will be hard for him to work with this attitude, but he puts unnecessary thoughts in the far box and wonders, Why do you want to learn English? A standard question, but Chonguk immediately changes in his face. It seems to be relaxing. Apparently, he is not very comfortable communicating with a stranger. I want to travel, immediately sounds in response, and Taehyung smiles, venting the atmosphere. Good desire. Many of my students want it. How old are you? 24. For some reason he frowns. And you? 27. Taehyung continues to smile. How did you find me? Through acquaintances? This Chonguk has such a face. Apparently, is standard. On the university website. Do you study there? I studied. Now I'm working part-time in the laboratory. I'm a graduate student. Taehyung looks at him in surprise. What faculty do you have? Physics and mathematics. Chonguk barely visibly chuckles at someone else's reaction. Taehyung looks at him in all eyes. Do you happen to know Kim Seokjin by chance? I know him by chance. He was my thesis curator. Wow, he knows how to be normal. Taehyung laughs hoarsely, and Chonguk, albeit not quite confident, but smiles at him for the first time. I wouldn't say that. And the atmosphere immediately changes, because Chonguk is happy to talk about how he graduated from the university, did not go to the specialty, but got a barista in one cafe for foreigners, trying to tighten his tongue. He says that all his life he dreamed of traveling, To see the world, what the warm smile tells about the sea, for forests and tropics, how he dreams of doing photography and just living. Taehyung absorbs his words, takes note as motivation in the future. It always works in class, and Chonguk, it turns out, likes to chat about his life, despite the fact that at first glance he seems very closed and dissatisfied with everything. However, the first lesson goes smoothly. The guy absorbs Taehyung's instructions, takes some notes for himself when he talks about how best to remember the rules, listens carefully. How many trial sessions do you usually conduct before arranging a meeting? Chonguk asks, and there is a fold between his eyebrows. Taehyung doesn't understand why he frowns all the time. A habit, maybe, usually 2 or 3, he says, collecting the printouts they worked within a folder. He smiles easily, looking at the screen. You actually have good English. Chonguk almost smiles back, but presses his lips, nodding, and, no, Taehyung does not try to feel the ground at all, and absolutely does not flirt with him when he says, I could make an exception and arrange a meeting earlier. Because it seems that you are serious. Chonguk slowly looks up at him while Taehyung suppresses his smile with all his strength. He hides it in all ways, scratches his nose, presses his lips, even turns away, unable to restrain herself. This guy is extremely strange, but his head is cut off. Taehyung is ready to shout about how cute he is when he ceases to be serious pepper. And if Chonguk understood him correctly, he may not agree to the meeting. He can frown his big forehead again, throw a strict look at the camera, politely refuse the offer, but he is silent, looking at the screen. Taehyung understands that he sees his stupid smile, the way he nervously brushes his hair off his forehead, bites his lips, but he honestly doesn't care. Chonguk doesn't seem like a modest boy, so if he dislikes such behavior, he can always say it. They are both adults and understand everything. Moreover, Taehyung doesn't plan to insist. However, Chonguk has been silent for too long, and Taehyung even at some point thinks he's stuck, but no, the guy moves, calmly putting his pen aside. How do you understand? He asks, and Taehyung smiles modestly. Got what? I don't think you're so interested in my English. If you don't want to, just give up. He says every day. We'll have a couple of classes online, but then I'll still have to give you the tasks. So we'll have to meet if you're really determined to study further. Your business relations. Chonguk is silent for a while, looking past the screen, thinking about something, but looks up again. Don't you take money for your classes? I don't do it for money. Do you drink coffee? I love it. Taehyung does his best to look as if he's not being invited on a date right now. I'm treating. But the smile asks for on his lips, and Taehyung doesn't hold back. He smiles and shrugs. Okay, are you sure you don't have anyone? Chonguk frowns again. It's strange, but Taehyung likes exactly that. How impenetrable this guy seems to feel. How confident, at the same time detached from everything mundane. It's like nothing can hurt him. Taehyung likes that. I'm absolutely free. Don't you trust? You raise the topic so easily, as if you weren't doing it for the first time. Chonguk is closely watching him, with students, never before. To be honest, I wasn't even sure you'd understand. Just, he shrugs. I decided to try. This is the first time I've met such a confident person. Taehyung would argue with him, but he doesn't even think of opening his mouth, chuckling briefly. He wasn't sure he wouldn't be taken far away. He's doing this for the first time, because he's really intrigued. And it's not that Taehyung is so abused about his appearance, but nature clearly didn't offend this guy. It's the same feeling when you look at a person and unconsciously start breathing more often. The palms sweat, and the body throws into the heat from new feelings when you see that it's mutual. I work all week. How about next Sunday? Chonguk suggests. I was hoping for tomorrow, Taehyung admits, but Sunday will suit me. So, we'll still have time to do a couple of classes. He looks at the screen for a long time, looking at someone else's face, and Chonguk sits at the coffee table, putting his phone in front of him, silently looks back. You can't call it embarrassing, rather, they both understand what this silence means. There was something in silence that was not said, about sudden mutual interest, perhaps even attraction. Tell us about yourself, Chonguk asks first, takes the phone and goes to the kitchen with him. How did you get to this? And this is the first joke that Taehyung sincerely laughs at. And after it, 100 new and thousands of topics appear, about work, study, even dreams. That this Chonguk doesn't drink coffee, preferring green tea, that he doesn't like rain and dirt at all, but he likes frost and snow. And Taehyung feels so easy, talking, it seems, about everything in the world. This is the first time with him, and this strange feeling is incomparable. Why do you do it for free? Chonguk is interested in a calm, measured voice. He's in the kitchen, cutting carrots in a very dim light, cooking his own dinner. I just like it when people get what they want. I like to help them, Taehyung quietly confesses that evening, already lying in bed. I love it when they are sincerely happy. In response, there is a pleasant silence that does not annoy Taehyung at all. After a few hours of communication, he managed to understand that Chonguk is silent every time he thinks about his words. He looks serious when he says, "Did it hurt to fall from heaven?" And Taehyung laughs quietly again, "I think you're an angel." Taehyung hardly blushes, biting his lips to the pain, and can't help but smile wide. He stares stupidly at the ceiling, hiding his face blazing from an overabundance of feelings, wants to sleep, but does not want to say goodbye to Chonguk. He has a feeling that he has known this person all his life, and it happens so that there are so few hours in the day for a normal conversation. God, it seems that this is the moment Taehyung falls in love with him. At first sight? Video call? In life, it turns out, and everything really happens,